Okay, this is my first time live streaming from a mobile phone. My phone out in the middle of the woods of Missouri at 3:36 a.m. So I wanted to see if I could screen share. Apparently not. I wanted to screen share of a conversation between Dave Berlinski, Stephen Meyer, and David somebody else. And they're just talking about the mathematical impossibility of forming a single amino acid. And the difference between a functioning amino acid and a non functioning amino acid is extremely, extremely large and small between the two. So getting the right one is extremely small, and getting gibberish is extremely large. As far as the percentage wise of getting a functional amino acid from a protein that's like 120 amino acids long chain. But this goes into numbers that are beyond comprehension, of course. And we have to understand that the world, the universe wouldn't even be here anymore at the rate that it takes for a chance to make a single protein chain of amino acids in the right order, which then has to be folded, then has to have quality control and repair and or be discarded and rebuilt again. And of course there's processes for all of those things. They have to be all in place. And we're just talking about trying to get a single amino acid. So, you know, people don't realize it yet, but evolution is like the baseless um, proposal or suggestion that there ever was in all of the history of mankind, basically. It's the worst or the most impossible thing that could possibly ever exist. I mean, there's so many more things that have more chance, which also don't have a chance to happen either. But evolution is far beyond that because, like I said, the universe wouldn't even exist in the time that it takes to try to sequence a single amino acid because of the fact that everything falls apart anyways, and how much more left-handed chain of amino acids, plus the fact that they all have to be existing together. So you can't just have a single um, amino acid chain to be correctly sequenced or put into the right order. You have to have that plus every other ribosome and codon and mechanism there is in the cell to be functioning all at the same time, which is just total pseudoscience, total absurd nonsense. evolution is pseudoscience. It is the single worst belief that there ever was, basically. I mean, maybe if you can find it, just look up interview. It's a recent interview with Stephen Myers, David Berlinski, and David somebody else. You know, he's a mathematician, I guess, or something. No, no, David Berlinski's a mathematician. But anyway, the other guy, I guess, is a biologist. But they're discussing in this interview in Paris somewhere, um, the absurdness of getting a single amino acid chain for a single protein, small one, to be correctly sequenced. And they'll go through it. The best thing that I saw in their interview was that when this one David guy was saying how the theory of Darwin was such a beautiful theory, and that he had to eventually discard it in spite of its beauty, just because it was incorrect. And then so the interviewer turns to David Berlinski and says, "What do you think about the theory of Darwin? Is it beautiful?" he says, "Not in the least, not at all." Or did you ever think? He said, "Did you ever think that the theory of evolution was beautiful?" And he says, "Never, never. You never gave any, never thought it was beautiful. Never thought it had any validity whatsoever." That was David Berlinski when they asked him a question. I thought that was great because that would be the kind of answer I would make, and what I would give. People try to butter it up, and say, "Oh, the theory of evolution is such a beautiful theory." It's nonsense. It's absolute rubbish. You know, never had any basis, never had any significance, and never will. It was never convincing to people that think about it. Of course, you have to think about it. You can't just believe what other people say. You have to think about what evolution would require. And face it, even if you didn't know there was the thing called DNA storing information, you you can't look at an organism, a living organism, being born, growing into a mature organism, whatever it's going to be, and not understand that it's doing that by way of specific instructions. Even if it does look a little different, and that everything looks different, all people look a little bit different, but they're all basic characteristics of the same set of information, because we all consist of the same information, just with different expressions, basically variations, which fluctuate back and forth. Like you won't see you won't see certain characteristics being too extreme. Like there would be a limit as to how high your cheekbones can be, or how pronounced that your jaw can be. And all of this is regulated. You have to look at the animal You have to look at it and understand that everything is regulated, everything is measured out, everything is timed out. It's timed out and measured out exactly what the organism is going to be. And you don't even know, you don't even have to know that there is such a thing as DNA that's involved. All you have to know is that things start growing and they stop growing. That in itself is a measurement. It's a it's a control measure. Caterpillars are caterpillars, and they can't do anything other than what a caterpillar does. Then it goes into a stage every time, every single time, every caterpillar goes into a stage of hibernation or forms a chrysalis, in which it totally restructures itself by the information that it has, and it comes out um, a winged creature, a winged insect. Not only a winged insect, but a very, you know, dramatic winged insect. Uh, and it has to hang upside down, where it pumps fluid into its wings. As the wings stretch out, they fold out. I mean, they unfold and they stretch out and they straighten out, and they have to. The butterfly has to sit there, hang there. It has to hang there a certain amount of time upside down while the fluid is going through the wing structure, and then it has to keep hanging so that it until it hardens. Because if it doesn't harden, the wings will harden. I mean, if it doesn't, you know, stretch out the wings so that it fills out, and if it hardens before the wings completely unfold and straighten out, the wings will harden all wrinkled up and folded, and it won't be able to fly. And I have personally seen a butterfly that was unable to fly because the wings hardened without being straightened out. So apparently, for some reason, it wasn't able to hold it, upside down and wait for its wings to harden. And it was never able to fly, and of course, it wasn't able to do anything a butterfly does. So all of this has to happen by instruction, timed, and with all these parameters and limitations and limits and variations and limits of variations. They have to be all programmed into the organism, and you don't even know you don't even have to know there's such a thing as a DNA, but we do happen to know it now, and it totally makes it totally impossible for any evolution to form any new protein or new gene at all. Because if you have a new protein, then you have to have a new gene for the protein. And there's no such thing. There's no such thing as getting by chance a new protein by chance. Because as I said earlier, the uh, the odds of getting a functional protein, a single functional protein of any kind, compared to a protein that's non-functional, is the odds of that are just, you know, just completely unrealistic as far as, there's not even enough time in the universe to get a single functional protein as opposed to a non functional protein, a viable working protein. And they didn't know this until they started trying, they put the computers trying to synthesize a functional protein, but they didn't realize how hard it was. And now they do know how hard it is. Anyways, I appreciate my single guest here. No, wait a minute. I see comments. Okay, okay. Anyways, so I wanted to be able to play the video, at least parts of it, showing this interview of Stephen Myers, David Berlinski, and this other David guy. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name or don't know his name. And it's really very enlightening, and it's just a factual interview of how impossible any any bit of evolution is. In other words, you can't even get any bit of evolution, much less any of the diversity that we have in the world by way of random selection or selecting of random mutations, which is just total nonsense. And I would like to appeal to anybody with a decent IQ of say up to 150 or more to really examine this thing and use your mind, use your ability and gifts to totally knock out this absurd teaching of evolution, which it is a teaching, it is a belief, it is a baseless belief, and it's being taught in every school in the world, around the world. And we in America, we lead the world, you know, as far as these things go, as far as taking the first position. If we take the position as, just throwing evolution out for its utter uselessness, the rest of the world will follow. The Europeans will follow. The the Asians will follow. Indians will follow because they'll see how absurd it is too. All we have to do is just point it out. Say, hey, look how absurd this nonsense of evolution is. This Darwinian theory, or whatever you want to call it, neo-Darwinian evolution. Look how absurd it is. It's total nonsense. And then everybody else will look too and say, oh, yeah, look at that. It has no basis whatsoever. Why are we teaching this stuff? And then they can throw it out. And then that's the only way that people around the world will have a chance to understand that they have a creator. And if you have a creator that that made you, that made the world, made the universe, everything in it, and then he's the only one who can be our hope of the being remade or eternal life. So it's very important that we throw out this baseless magical belief, it's a unicorn belief or whatever, um, that has just total nonsense. It's worse than Santa Claus. At least Santa Claus was a real person. Evolution never was anything. All it is just to confuse people and lead people away from the truth so they can know they have a maker. I mean, if you can't know that you have a maker, you can't know that he can be your savior, because only your maker can perfectly cover for you himself and remake you again from the inside out by the power of his true word as no one else can.